In the previous video, we saw how to download web content and optionally display it for the user. In the next video, our final video in this section, we're going to be making a What's the Weather app. And to be able to do that, we need to not only be able to download the weather information, but also format it and extract the precise information that we want and display that to the user. And to be able to do that, we need to be able to work with strings in a more advanced way than what we've done so far. So let's see how we do that by creating a new playground. I'll call this Working with Strings. Save it on the desktop. All right, so here we go. We can see we've got the value of our string on the right there. And remember that strings are just collections of characters. And the first thing I'll show you is just remind you that we can create a new string from an old one by appending it to something else. So if we take a string and another string and put a plus symbol between, then Swift will join those two strings together, and in this case use it to make a new string. All right, so far so good. There's a lot more that we can do with strings than just joining them together though. So if, for example, we wanted to loop through each of the characters in our string, then we could do that using a for loop. And we do that by creating a variable which we might call character. So we're going to go for character in, and then we're essentially going to create an array out of our new string characters by doing new string dot characters. And if we then print the character, it will then loop through all the characters, and as you can see, display them one on each line. So that can be useful if we're looking for a particular character within a string, but sometimes we want to do more advanced searches than that. And in that case, we often want to use a different string type. So I'm going to call this new type string. And the type that we're going to use is one that we've seen before, and that is an NS string. And we're going to create an NS string from a standard string, and the standard string I'm going to use is new string. So we've seen this NS string before. NS, remember, is short for next step. Next being the company that Steve Jobs founded before he came back to working with Apple, and a lot of the technology has come back with him. So with Swift, we now have strings and we have NS strings, which can get a little bit confusing. But the main difference between them is that NS strings have a number of functions available to them that strings don't have. And so let's see some of those in action. So let's say we wanted to get the first 5 characters from new string or new type string. They both have the same content, but they have different types. So with new type string, I can use substring and then 2. And if I put 5 there, that will give me the first 5 characters of the string. And there we go. You can see that gives us the word hello. Similarly, if I take new type string, I can do substring from. And if I go for substring from 4, that takes me from the 4th character to the end of the string. And that's exclusive. So we have HELL, and then this would start at the 5th character to the end. So here's a quick challenge for you. Can you use a combination of substring to and substring from to extract just the name Rob from this string? Or of course, if you've used your own name, extract your own name there. Go for it. All right, hope you managed it. All you needed to do was take new type string, and then it doesn't really matter which order you do things in. I'll do the from one first, and we want to start at the R here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the 7th character. So we're going to do from 6. So that should give us the Rob with the exclamation mark at the end. And then we want the first 3 characters of that. Now what's interesting though is that when you apply the substring method on an NS string, it actually returns a string. So if you try and do substring from on that, then that will give you an error, at least in this version of Xcode. So what you need to do is to create an NS string from that result there, but let's make it a string rather than a sting. And that then gives us, as before, Rob with an exclamation mark, but now we can apply the substring to it, and we want the first 3 characters. So we want substring 2 and the number 3 there. So that should give us Rob without the exclamation mark. There we go. So as well as being an interesting challenge in itself, it's a message to be careful of whether you're working with NS strings or strings. There is a whole other function that we can use to do the same thing though. If we want to get part of a string, we can start with new type string, and we can create a substring using a range. And NS range is a new type of variable that we haven't seen before, but it's just a way of defining a range of integers. So we can create one using NS range, and there's a number of ways that we can create a range, but I'm going to go for using a location and a length. So location 6 and length 3 should give us the same result. And there we go. So that's definitely a neater way of finding a string within a string rather than using substrings twice. Talking of finding a string within a string, it's often very useful to see if a string contains a particular word. And that's really easy to do in Swift. We just use an if statement and then get our string, and we're going to test to see whether it contains another string. So I might want to test to see if it contains my name, for example. And if so, we can write new type string contains Rob, or something like that. So we're definitely going to be using that in the next video when we're downloading and processing information from the internet. There we go. Another useful trick that we'll be using in the next video is splitting a string into its components. And we can do that by separating different parts of the string, for example, using the space character to separate it into different words. So let's see how that works. We'll take our new type string and we'll split it into components. And then we can choose, say, the space character to separate the different components, and that will then separate it into different words by the space character. But we could choose any string here, and we'll, as I say, be using that in the next video to be getting different sections of an HTML page. And there you go. So that gives you an array with the different words of the string in it. And very, very quickly, a final, often useful conversion is to just take the string and convert it into uppercase or lowercase. And that's fairly obvious what that does. But especially if you're getting the string from somewhere and you don't know which sections are uppercase or lowercase, it can be very useful to just convert everything to uppercase or everything to lowercase. And there we go. You can see it's just capitalized or made it all small. So as always, there's a lot more you can do with strings than what we've done here, but this will give us the basic skills that we need to extract the weather data from the website we'll be working with to build our What's the Weather app in the next video.